Yeah, I can manage it. Yep. Everything is going. All the English chat. Let's see. It still says monster cards. I go to market. The title is okay. Audience everyone. Search tags. TTRPG. Horror, no results found. Well, fuck you then. Gaming. Gaming news. Fuck it, I don't care. It still says calendar. What the fuck is it? Oh, maybe. Okay, maybe reset. Cool. I'm figuring shit out, guy. So fucking cool. My dad's cooler than your dad. He runs a stream. Does he even beat your mom? What? My dad does beat it. Post this on Facebook too. I post this in Cult Brazil and stuff. Oh, fuck yeah, dude. It's a huge community. Where do you think I post all the time? Holy shit. I'll post on Facebook. Yeah, dude. The thing you sent me earlier was like, what's that smell? It was so funny. So uncomfortable. Yeah. The smell. Really? Cool. I don't think they can. Oh wait, yeah they can.
and I've been on mute, and I've been saying amazing, very.
Sorry, this is what happens when I do production. Apparently, totally fucked that up.
I made amazing points early, and you guys missed it. There's some hot takes on.
I'm Rick.
God knows what.
This is Mark. We're making fun of white dudes in their 40s drinking IPAs who play tabletop games like any other hobby, and that was pretty much all the jokes we had.
That's it. There's no other jokes.
Good night, everybody. But no, we're talking about how Cult Divinity Lost is one of our favorite games. Mark is exceptionally good, in my opinion.
Stop
running Cult Divinity Lost. I've played 2 times in his games, and they've been some of the best experiences I've had at a table. That being said, this is a game that it has so much potential. And we'd like to talk tonight about how you can pick it up, play it, or run it. Or play in it, I should say. And just to get it in the hands of more folks, right? Because it's a fantastic game.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stigma. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing Cultist Wednesday. And I know that I was probably muted during my tirade about it, but Cultist Wednesday, what we're doing is we're trying to demystify the game a little bit, but also put it under a microscope. Take a hard look at Cult Divinity Lost. Talk about a game that we both love dearly, and figure out the best ways to approach it. Because when you open up a book and there's not only a dead baby, but also a whole lot of penises, you might have some reservations. So this is one of the reasons why we're talking tonight. And how the hell do you run this game? And the reason why we're saying it in such a way is because that was the question that we asked ourselves. I remember the first time we talked about it. The book is beautiful. There's a lot of gorgeous art. We're like, oh my God, let's gush over it. But how the hell are we going to run this fucking thing? Because there's a lot of problematic and potential sensitive things in this book. And honestly, there's also a lot. So it's almost like a kitchen sink. So you're like, you're unpacking all of it. Like, how do I include all of it in the game? So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight.
And that's the Big Dad and the thing said, oh, you definitely heard us say the horrific points of what's in this book.
Yes.
You bring up a good point. You buy this thing and you look through the artwork. They don't show a dead baby. They do talk about one that climbs out of someone's womb and, like, someone's pregnant for like 2 weeks and it's like a 9-month pregnancy and the thing crawls off to the docks, something crazy like that. That's the kind of really deep horror this book presents. And this is not a horror tabletop RPG for everyone. Definitely comes with some caveats and some content warnings. If you're truly not a fan of horror, this might be a bitter pill for you. Depending on who you have running the game, that's why we have safety consent forms. Cult is actually very aware of this. In fact, they are very good at having safety mechanic rules and session zeros and consent stuff.
Yep, especially with the lines and veils. What's not okay? What should be faded to black? Using the safe word as mechanics. I mean, there's a legitimate reason to have that in there, but it's actually one of the only games that really has that.
And it needs it. Picking this up off the shelf and skimming through, even if you're a horror fan, this can be a surprise. It was a surprise for me. And not only is the artwork jarring, but it's also laid out in a beautiful way. Like, it has blacks and reds and golds, and the whole thing is presented beautifully, even though it's a abysmal horror masterpiece. But the one thing about this core book that sets it aside from a lot of other products out there is that this has so much to offer and so many story nuggets that it throws at you. In fact, there's like maybe 10 pages full of just like bullet pointed paragraphs of things you could do with this game, which you don't see in any other book I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And all of them, as you read through them, you're like, holy crap, this is intense. And that could make a great scenario or even a campaign. So
even like a series of scenarios. You can have with this book, and there's not even, without even getting into what's a formal scenario, but just having these little seed ideas, and just, you could feed an entire game just using those seed ideas.
Right. So, I mean, the real point is, we titled this, How the Hell Do You Run This Game?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it has almost too much to offer, right? How do you narrow it down? Because you can honestly run anything in this game. Any horror movie you've ever seen, you can run it. The system is actually very easy. You can run anything with it. It's powered by the apocalypse. You give someone like a player moves that they can have sheet that comes with the cult PDF and all that you can download, and there you go. You're off to the races. The thing is, for a storyteller, you can almost get lost in the possibilities as far as how diverse, not only the world that they present to you. I think there's like 12 different realms of absolutely incredible imaginative horror, ranging from Gaia, like nature run world, to the Inferno, which is basically like the Judeo-Christian hell. There's like a technological version as well, and everything in between. I have not even seen those explored in the games that I've seen since the game's inception be fully utilized. I think
I agree.
Red Moon role playing's the Summit touched on, I think, 2 or 3 of them, because the technological one and Inferno kind of were on the borders, right? And that made you be like, well, fuck, how many things are going on here? The veil is thin, and 2 different realities are pouring into it. In reality, there's really like 12. So do you pick one from the book? Do you make one for yourself? Well, what we're talking about tonight is how you can take one of them, all of them, or something for yourself, and take the basic concepts of this freaking awesome game and make it work for you. Because this is a game that gives you all the tools you need and the inspiration you need. You just have to know what you can really take to start, right? Take the first step.
And I want to talk about that first step for a second, because taking assumptions of the book and you're digesting everything that you can of Call of Divinity Lost. The best approach to start this game is to actually do. One of the challenges that I found is, number one, there's not a whole hell of a lot of content out there. One of the biggest differences between this and say Dungeons and Dragons is that D&D, you throw a dead cat and you'll hit 5 different actual play streams and podcasts, and learning done how to best, or what is your personal approach of running Dungeons and Dragons is pretty easy. But with Cult, there's so few that it's the big question of like, how do I even begin, or what's the style, or like, how do we do this here? Because there's barely any models on how to do it. It's a plus, in my opinion, because once you actually start doing it, once you actually start putting something together, you kind of just got to run with it. And this is the best game, in my opinion, to help you determine what is your GM style. And I think that the book provides a guide on how to best value your players, how to best put together a philosophy. There's a section in the book called Horror Contract, and it has these principles for the GM to take on. And these guiding principles, things like be a big fan of the player characters. Never compromise the drama for mechanics, right? There are certain philosophies that are in this list, and there's about, I think, 15 to 20 different philosophies, different principles that they list out that will help you at the very least get a good foothold on what not necessarily the tones, but will help you determine kind of what your GM style is.
You make a really good point.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going.
No. That was my point. I mean, I think that it's twofold. It's looking at those principles and trying to look at yourself and go, okay, what kind of GM do I want to be? And then I guess just like, you know, Frodo, Bilbo Baggins, like how do you make that first step out of Hobbiton towards the scariest place on earth?
Yeah, play. Um, you know, when I think it was before I even started getting back into tabletop, I bought the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah.
Not because I was intending to run D&D, but I wanted to start writing stories.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Oh, that's actually a really good guide to tell any story," because they tell you about um, the types of audiences you'll run into, and that's not just like the people you have at the table, but like it's. I mean, it's all over the place. It's I recommended it to a friend who was a film guy and like an audio podcaster, and I was like, "You may not play tabletop, but get this book because this truly teaches you how to tell a story." And you know, there's been a lot of like storyteller guides to X, Y, and Z different games. They're few. I mean, World of Darkness is one of the only other lines that really has those. Um, this book has one included.
Yeah.
And when I first read it, I was shocked at how modern and also different the storyteller guide stuff is within it. It's almost worth buying just for that alone, even if you never run Cult. Um, the actual storyteller screen is so good for this game. It has an entire panel, almost an entire panel out of 4, that is just how do you describe someone quickly on the fly?
Yeah.
And it has like a list of like hair, eyes, weight, mannerisms, ways of speaking. And it's like you can take one from each very quickly as a storyteller, and boom, you've got an NPC who's very unusual, diverse, easy to describe.
Yeah.
Actually, for a while when I first started running V5, I had the Cult one in front of me open as well because I still wasn't like as sure about myself as an ST or used to describing a number of different people that were on the fly, you know, and I felt like, man, this is really extra. This is really handy. Um, so I think Cult in its own way helps other game lines as well if you're a GM, which is just another reason to pick it up. But tonight we're here to talk about how do you run Cult. Back to you, Mark.
Well, I guess like, and you're making really good points because that's the one thing that this game does is it informs you as a person, it informs you as a GM, and you take that and you run it with whatever other game that you're going to be playing or you're going to be running. There's a lot of resources in the book that are going to be helping you GM, not just for Cult, in other words.
Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head.
You
It's
know,
it's the starting though, like
it's yeah,
the doing.
it's
How do you start?
it's definitely tough. You know, I had some time before the pandemic, and I was like, I'm going to check Barnes and Nobles to see if I can find other books on how to be a better storyteller because I
Mhm.
love telling stories. Doesn't matter what system or game it is. This is so much fun to do, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what are some modern books that I can find to help me tell better stories? And everything, if you actually go to a bookstore, it's all about like telling a business anecdote in front of a board. Not for a game, not for anything. And this is a hobby that's existed, you know, at least as long as D&D has been around for like what, 30, 40 years?
I would almost argue longer.
And there's almost no books on how to really tell a collaborative narrative with people at a table, whether it's a game or not.
Yeah.
They almost don't exist exclusively
Yeah.
unless they are part of a game line. They're extremely few and far between. I found a couple that were like, here's how to make a compelling character that's 3-dimensional. Well, that's awesome, but what's really out there to teach you how to be a good ST? And that's one of the things we wanted to try and do with Gehenna Gaming, GM advice, because we want more people to play the games we love and to show people the games we love so that they're playing them. You know, it just helps the whole industry. It helps people to play with us because we love to play and grow the community by having more tables available, etc. But this is truly one of the only books out there that helps you not only learn how to do any of this in the tabletop industry outside of D&D, that it's kind of remarkable and it's hidden in this absolutely horrific gem, right? I mean, other than Morkborg, those two games are the black metal of tabletop RPG.
Oh, for
This
sure.
this game can
And
be as dark as you want it.
and I think it's really what makes it a gem is because you have to dig your way through some pretty intense stuff. But it helps you. It holds your hand throughout the entire book. It also doesn't give you full explanations on things, right? When you get a D&D book or a setting book, you have a explanation of the entire realm and all the things that are happening in every single corner, no matter what, pages and pages and pages and pages of what they call it fluff, right? Cult Divinity Lost has light suggestions, tones and themes,
Like
examples of what
open-ended
it would look
questions,
like,
right?
and a lot of open-ended questions. So and it asks you, the reader or the GM or the player, what is this? And you can answer that question. And I think the game in and of itself, and that's probably an extension of the culture of Powered by the Apocalypse, although I would argue that Cult Divinity Lost has gone beyond its system. And
Yeah.
I think that because Monster Hearts 2 is under the same system, but I would not say that these two games are exactly the same in approach, in the way that you play, in the way that it's typically run. I think that I think it's kind of gone beyond that. It just so happens to use Power by the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We're talking about a lot of collaborative storytelling and how it's not just on the GM. And we have a person in our chat named Stimhack who brings up a great point.
what's that?
That, yeah, everyone always talks about how the GM does this and that and puts no responsibility on the players. That's absolutely true. And for first time players, a lot of that's just on the GM, unfortunately. You're running a one shot, especially at a con with someone who's never played the game before, you do have to kind of hold their hands and you have to kind of develop one shots that are more designed towards that to get someone used to that lore, to give them the full immersive experience of what they're getting into. But for people who have played a role playing game before and know how to RP and get into it, even if they're not familiar with the system, um, there is give and take. Everyone at the table is telling a story together. And maybe make that part of your session zero. That is the expectation. It's not just solely on the game master, no matter what game you're playing. And it's more fun, everyone, if you're creating a story together. I mean, Cult is great because this is one of the games that really instilled in me the players are the star, and that the GM should see them as the spotlight characters. Um, Frankly, a lot of the other games don't make that emphasis. They probably mean to. They probably have always meant to. It's been like a zeitgeist instilled fact that we're supposed to know. But to be honest, we always don't know that. I didn't necessarily know that until I read it in this cult book. And that's been something that has really defined and solidified my entire playstyle as a storyteller. That I'm here as the arbiter of the rules. I'm here to describe the world, the characters, some stories. But largely my role is reactionary on what the players do. And I'm a very open, sandboxy kind of ST. I don't railroad a lot of people. And if I'm telling a story, I have so many different paths to how to get to Z, the last point, that I can switch it on the fly and kind of evolve, right? But that's on me. That's my responsibility at the table. The player's responsibility is to wear the shoes of someone that they have never met before, created in their mind's eye. Perhaps it's a pregen that was given to them. They have to understand that character. Talk to your GM about how you're going to interact with that person and why. What are your other connections to the people at the table? How are you connected into this setting? The lore. Goes for any tabletop game. But this is collaborative storytelling. Cult
And
helps you understand that.
I think there is a point that is good to be taken away about the idea of the onus being not just on the GM but also on the players. And I think that Cult does a really good job of this new edition, anyways. It's a really, really good job of putting that onus on the players and helping the GM put that onus on it through questions. One of the major questions, the biggest question that you can ask as a GM while running a Cult Divinity Lost game is, what do you do? Especially when you make a move, right? When a GM makes a move, something happens, something big happens, and you ask the players, what do you do? And you can, and I a lot of my games tend to have a lot of drama. There tends to be a lot of, it's thick in the air, and I let people sit in it and I let them react to it. And that tension is so palatable that the players can't help themselves but to completely immerse themselves in the experience and take action or say something or have a conversation. And I think that it truly is collaborative to the point where I don't necessarily think the onus is really on anybody except for everybody at the table. I think it makes hold someone accountable or responsible at the table is difficult because it's everyone's job to make sure that we all have a good time. And it's everyone's job that we stick with it. We stay with the story. We stay with the fiction, as Colt calls it. If you stay with the fiction, if everyone is in it, and I've never done it at a table. I would love to do it at a table. I've only done it digitally. At a table, I can guess that it's probably even more intense, especially with the way that certain people run games. Like I've had conversation with people using candlelight and having it almost be a LARP-like experience, which is really fucking cool. And I'm sure getting people who are interested in this kind of immersive experience is one of the reasons why we all play tabletop. But again, coming down to system, right, to mechanics, it makes it really, really easy that the GM doesn't have to roll any dice and that the players do. So again, that's another piece. Like, okay, now it's up to the players to be rolling dice. The GM's just here to help ensure that this game goes and goes well, and that there's a story, and there's an overarching theme. With your sandbox style, I'm sure you can still make that happen as you do with any other game. In fact, probably much easier if you're not rolling any dice.
Yeah, I tend to rely more on the narrative style of storytelling than having you roll for everything. We've got some great people in the chat tonight. We're bringing up some good points. One of them said, "The best parts are when you lean back and just let the players interact with each other." 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's what's really the focal point of all of this. If you can set a scene that's important enough for them to interact, talk,
Yep.
and figure things out without you being involved, I could sit there and watch that for half an hour. Doesn't
Oh,
matter.
sure.
That's
Yeah.
my entertainment for the night. Watching
Yeah.
two people fully embrace the role that they have taken. I mean, if the storyteller's like a director, that's the best thing. You're not telling them to do anything. They're there in the moment and you're watching a performance. That's entertainment. And it's fantastic. So how do you run Cult? Um, we were talking a little bit before we started recording here about like some of the things that I think are important on how to like remember, especially before you start playing Cult. Now, I mean, when you're playing D&D or you're playing a different game, you're setting a tone for like an entire world. And in this case, Cult is set in like the modern, right? It's set in contemporary times,
For
which
the
like
most part.
Vampire, it can really help. I mean, you can set it anywhere you want. One thing I felt that helped people at conventions get really used to playing games set in the modern, like Vampire, is that can I use my cell phone? Yeah, of course you can.
Right.
What, really? Yeah. Anything you can think of you can do in reality, you can do it here.
Right.
Physics apply. I mean, there was a game I took power lines down with arms of Ahriman from Oblivion and put them on top of an SI agent's car so it electrified the outside of the shell and he couldn't get out because he was going to probably kill me. Right? That's just something that's part of reality. You're just using supernatural powers to do something about it. But in this case, Cult, I feel you need to. The first act, or at least a good part of the first act, has to be an explanation and getting familiar with the banality of reality. You have
Yeah.
to solidify, get your feet set on flat concrete ground. You have to make things that are normal seem normal, because that really, really elevates how far this game can push not only the personal horror, but the horror of how everything that you've experienced your whole life has been an illusion. And not just one illusion, but one of many different realms of what's really out there, and how you're just fish food in a tank to creatures that are absolutely beyond comprehension.
Yeah, and I think that, and we were talking before, like I think I'm unable, as of right now, in my GMing ability with cults, to not highlight the normal or the mundane before diving into the more intense. I think that um, the idea behind horrible things happening to people, or fear, or things that are scary. I mean, it's a horror game, so you have to be able to at least have a reference point.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is no reference point, and it's all like a blood orgy, it nothing seems that important, and nothing seems that scary, and it all seems just kind of bland.
Yeah, I mean, in horror, you have to have something to care about. You have to have something safe and normal. That's basically the bait of what you have
Right,
to get back to.
right.
Like Hellraiser, once you once you open the box, if there's no possibility of closing it, who gives a
Mhm.
fuck? Just kill me. Just
Yeah,
torture me and get it over with. Oh, I'm gonna be here for millennia. Well, that's all, folks. you know,
yeah.
that sucks. I fucked up royally, and I'm gonna be tortured by a pinhead forever.
Well, I
Uh,
think with cult, it does this thing with elevation, right? So, and that's baked into this game is points of elevation. It starts growing and growing and growing, get more and more intense. You elevate from the point you're at now to the next level of intensity. So if you go from in a kindergarten where there's nothing going on to pinhead, I think that that's a big elevation, and you need to have at least a couple of steps before you get there to Pinhead showing himself, and now you're locked in the Lemachance configuration.
excellent to you. We've got some other good questions in the chat tonight, which is fantastic. We love having you here live, collaborating with us, just like we were at a table. Someone was asking, how does combat work in Cult?
Oh, that's a fun one. So it's scary at first because it seems like it wouldn't work that well with Colt, but it does. Um, you do have you do have harm, right? Like you can. I think someone asked, like, is there
Hit
HP?
points. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. You get little boxes and injuries. Every time you face an injury, you have to kind of roll to keep it together. So think about it this way: if you get punched in the face or stabbed in the gut, that's one opportunity for the illusion to show itself just for a moment, and it could affect your stability score. So the way it works is like this. Okay. Um, Walking down the street, I see a dude, he says something. I want to, you know what? I'm mad. I'm feeling really all froggy, and I'm feeling like I really want to get into an altercation with this guy. So I'm going to say, hey, fuck you, buddy. Okay. You want to say fuck you, buddy? And you say it. And he says, no, fuck you. And he looks at you right in the eyes, and he grabs you by your collar. And now you're kind of in a conflict, and you can do something, right? You could try to manipulate him, or you can try to fight him. You can do what's called engaging in violence, where you roll your 2d10 and you add your violence score. But you have to describe what that violence is. You can't just say, I want to engage in violence, because again, the drama, the fiction, the RP, all this is important. So describe what you're going to do. Describe how you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what I like to do is people say, I want to do this. And I go, okay, hold on. What exactly do you want to do? Like, how do you want to do this? And then I have them roll. And so there's a couple of options that are, and there's a list of player moves. It's a little cheat sheet on the back of the Cult Divinity Lost book that I give to every single one of my players. I say, here, this is your list, whatever you want to do. I'm looking at it too, so I can tell people, why don't you do this? And then I can read the options. If you get a 15 plus, cool stuff happens. If you get under a 10, negative stuff happens. But ultimately, if you botch a roll that's under 10, I believe, under 5, you can just, as a GM, you can describe that the guy beats you up or something happens. You guys trip and fall on the ground, and now you're wrestling, and now you're in the middle of the street and there's a car coming. You can make it dramatic. You can have the fight be as long as possible. If you want to have a whole fight scene, you can fight with groups of people, and there's a system in the book that talks about how to engage in violence or engage in altercations or conflict as groups, as a gang or a roving gang or a roving group of monsters, or even bullies in a school, right? And it's pretty straightforward. Essentially, is I want to do a thing and I roll for it. As a GM, you don't roll. You don't have any dice. So you can essentially, just like directing a movie, like Rick said, you can essentially direct your NPCs to do certain things, in which case it's up to the players to react in whatever way possible. If they want to talk their way out of it, they can try. If they want to fight their way out of it, they can try as well. There's a whole list of different kinds of guns and weapons that you can use that add modifiers to rolls. It's not very complicated, though. Essentially, just like anything else in this game, you roll your 2 dice, you add your stats, and you see what you get. And it's on a score of 1 to 20.
Yep.
And
Easy.
if depending on what you get, that's really what happens.
And that's like the telltale sign of a good system. Being able to pick it up by anyone, anywhere, run with it, and use it to tell a good story, right? One of the things I liked that you said was like, you can use anything as like a window into the deeper horror. What's happening? And you've done this before, especially in our cult series that we had, where like someone was in a group. It was everyone there lost somebody, and it was like
Good intentions.
Yes, it was Good Intentions was the name of the series,
Yes.
and people were coming to like talk about the people they lost and shit, and a lot of people didn't really want to be there. And there was one guy who was just obnoxious. He was some kind of actual demon, something in disguise. But like as he was being obnoxious and pissing everyone off, and the tension in the room started to escalate. Like you could see like things on the wall that were like just pipes running through. All of a sudden, like you could see them drip. Instead of dripping like condensation or water, it looked like souls leaking from the pipe and shit. And like it just brings me back to like Ghostbusters 2, when there's just like, oh, there's a spirit of negativity in the air that's causing all this goop to cause hell. And it's like you're having this moment of tension in the game that's building because you've got this guy in the middle of a situation where people are supposed to be reining it in and sensitive, and he's just like, your person died, fuck you. And he's just pushing your buttons. And as the players like emotions are like, this guy is fucking pissing me off, and it's like tension building, and everyone's getting more pissed off at him. And the moderator's like, all right, you mister, you need to calm down. You're not supposed to talk like that here. We respect everyone's time. And it just keeps getting worse. That level of tension in that game, Mark utilized to be like, the little things you see out of the corner of your eye are getting more and more fucked up. That's because your soul, just the food that these things literally eat, they want. All of this is an illusion so that you remain dormant, medium rare, baby. So they want to eat you. Because you're already living in this hellscape on multiple levels, and all of these crazy different realities are just here. And that our reality is just the illusion for them to come in and pick the snacks they want. But if you're awakened to what's actually happening, you've got a sliver of God in you. That's the divine they're trying to eat. So they want to keep you asleep as long as possible. So something as mundane as Mark's on the street, he's picking a fight with me. He locks eyes and he says, you watch it, buddy. And I go to punch him in the face, and I do. that's enough for me to like see through sometimes the fucked up reality of what's really happening. And as I punch Mark, and maybe he loses his tooth, but spittle and blood, just like the cover of like Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera, right? It's like ejecting from him like instead of blood and whatever viscera, it's like a pile of worms that
Yeah.
just go flying as if they were shotgunned out of his face. And not only do they hit the ground, but they begin to start crawling back to him as if he's like Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas. And for a split second, your player sees that, and they don't. You gotta keep it together. What's really happening here? Is it violence? Or is it something more? Am I losing my mind? Or did I just lose my temper? That's how you run Cult. You take any example of tension and you use it to peek through the veil of what's really going on.
It works in such a way that keeps people engaged with it. And there are quite a few, I guess, little mechanics that you can rely on. You know, when it comes down to things like engaging in violence or enduring pain or rolling to keep together, all of these little things help to, I guess, mechanize the game, because there are a set of rules, but ultimately that's the point, in my opinion. This is just my bold opinion. The point of Cult Divinity Lost is not to get bogged down with rules, is not to get bogged down with the mechanics of it. Honestly, if you're running a game that's a few sessions or more than 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 sessions, or an entire campaign that you're running for a long time, you kind of don't really want your characters to die, because your players are going to be not having that great of a time if you kill them immediately after the second scenario, because oopsies, they underrolled and hey, they're dead. And Cult Divinity Lost allows you to have this idea of death being just the beginning, right? And you can kind of retcon certain things, but I think ultimately, I think the drama of things, I think that the fear, I think that the gestalt of the game itself, the tones and the themes that you're going for, the story that you're trying to tell, the fiction and everything else, those are more important, in my opinion, than, well, you rolled wrong, son, and now you're dead. Ha! Roll for another character.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. I don't know. It feels weird for this game. I guess for Dungeons and Dragons it could work, but other people would argue otherwise. Ultimately, it's up to you. If you are going to be running a game where your characters have a potential of dying, first of all, here's my philosophy. Number one, if it's a one shot, the assumption's there for everybody. You might die. It's a one shot. Your characters are not going to be telling any stories after this because it's only going to be one shot. So it's assumed that somebody could die. But if it's a few episodes or scenarios, if it's a full campaign, you need to be upfront about it. If you're going to be one of those hard ass GMs that say, well, listen, I play pretty tight with the rules. I run a tight ship here. So if your character dies, you're going to have to make a new character. Go for it. But you got to be upfront with it, and everyone's got to be game for it. If they're not, be willing to compromise, I guess, because ultimately you want everyone to have a good time. But ultimately, the most important part of it, even if you do kill a character, kill that character in the most dramatic and most important part of the fiction. If it's an emotional scene, or if maybe you have, if a player characters have connected in such a way where if one of them die, it would be devastating. That's when you do it. Don't do it early. Don't do it when there's nothing happening. Don't do it on oopsies. Retcon yourself. Be like, well, you know what? Technically they died, but I'm going to keep them alive. Do it if you are going to have a character die, and if everyone's game for it, do it at the most dramatically appropriate time.
I love how you had one of our regular Gehenna Gaming Patreon supporters, Kayla.
Yeah.
Who became quadriplegic.
Yeah.
And became like the baby of this like couple. That was insane.
It's
like, you're a baby now.
Such an intense scene.
You're our baby. We're gonna take care of you forever. And like, meanwhile, they're
Yeah.
like sawing your arms and legs off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, the follow up game was Route 66, right?
Route
Or
66.
the
Yeah.
driver was it?
Yeah. The driver. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think Route 666. I technically had you guys on.
so I'm like the undercover cop in this like group of people who is just a bunch of criminals on the run, and we break down in the middle of nowhere on an emu farm, which is really fucked up. And it's like this creepy old man and like his super hot daughter, and like the wife died mysteriously, and he's like a super Bible guy, and he's like really bizarre, right? You should check
Yeah.
out the cult games, and anything Mark runs is really good. But he keep inflating his ego because he's really good at running cult. It's fantastic. But
Please stop. But keep going.
shit, yeah. So I died in that game.
You did.
Spoiler alert, I totally fucking died. But death was not the end for me. I saw a different realm. And things came to me and offered me a bargain. And like anyone who's smart in a horror movie, you just say yes. Of course I'll make a pact with you. Because otherwise you're just gonna like devour my soul and eat me. Do whatever it takes, you know? So I become part of this hell realm, which I think in cult they call it like a death priest or something like that.
Yeah, you're a death magician.
Yeah, a death magician. So I literally come back and I have an altered state of existence
Yeah.
and a totally different operating system.
What's funny about that game is that the Patreon game happened in the same world. Like basically I took the driver. It's a one-on-one campaign. You can find cultdivinitylost.com. They have it available in resources. It's free for everybody. I like to call it the date night scenario because you can, if you want to sit with your significant other and play cults, you can. It takes one GM and one player, and it's a lot of fun. And I took the game.
Your wife is really morbid, or husband, whatever.
Yeah. If they're
Partner.
really, if your significant other is really into a dark game, and play this one. And I kind of ran with it, and I kind of jury rigged it to kind of figure out how I can have multiple players, and I ended up just kind of creating an entire scenario based on the story seeds that they give you in this. But the Patreon game that we had was in this world. I had them play it, and then the game that you guys were in, I guess
it was like the aftermath.
It was kind of the aftermath. It was maybe a different dimension, or it was the same night, the same day. Time is kind of wibbly wobbly, I guess. But you pretty much played the same game that I provided for the Patreons. But I knew that the patrons were watching. So I wanted to like have
give them
some
a treat.
Easter eggs, and I just really loved the way that Kay played, and I wanted to make sure that that she was represented in there. But it was
somebody else got quadriplegic, and they were like, we have twins now, you know, and someone else became like a quadriplegic.
Yes.
To this like insane couple.
Yes.
And meanwhile, our Patreon person's in the chat room being like,
"No, oh my god!" No.
It was really funny.
I like to do that. I like to add little Easter eggs from like the game that I ran for Virtual HorrorCon last year. I ran a couple of cult games, so I put little Easter eggs in hopes that maybe one player who played in that game was watching. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's really easy to get really dark. So I'm gonna talk about mechanics again for a second because I want to make, because we're talking about some deep shit here. I decided to use the safe word and mechanize it. I wanted to have the safe word be more prevalent. So for the Cult Divinity Lost miniseries that we did, I decided to have, and I think we did it for Silent Hill too, where we decided what the safe word was going to be. And once, if the player, not the player character, but if the player was made to feel uncomfortable, if I crossed a line that we previously agreed on by accident, because sometimes that could happen. You just get in the moment, maybe, oopsies, sorry, I didn't mean to, but I crossed the line. Have the safe word and make people comfortable using it, and then you take control of the scene. You say the safe word. Now it's yours. You can either reverse time, go back. You can change the decision from an NPC. You can have things turn out in the way you do. You just describe the scene in a way that'll be much better. And I feel like that piece was probably, I think that piece is missing. I don't think I'm ever not going to do that for cults. I think it's important for GMs to have that in their back pocket, especially when you're describing deep, dark, horrible shit or a scary scene. What's scary and normal to you might be way too intense and way over the line for others. And it's just important that you have that in your back pocket just to protect yourself and everybody else at the table.
Absolutely. And we've seen other people take that mechanic and really utilize it as like a key point, right? We played a game called The Great American Witch by our friend Christopher Gray, independent developer, who there was like a couple different roles, and it was like, okay, you rolled really well. You have narrative control of the scene. It's kind of like the player is now the storyteller, and it's like you.
I think I stole that idea from that.
Yeah, it's
I
like
might have.
You tell me what happens, and it's like, well, shit.
Shit. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Cool. My lightning bolt not only kills the guy, but it powers up my electric guitar, and I get some tasty licks. Right? Well, I mean, whatever. I mean, that's ridiculous. But seriously, you mean that's the kind of player you don't want at your table. I'm the bad guy here. Oh no, but I mean, you can have a lot of fun with it. It gives the players, like, especially with this when it's safety.
Yeah.
It's like if you utilize it, and you're a player and you're really freaking out, it's like, all right, I run out of the room, the thing tries to grab me and it catches air. I'm able to slam the door behind me, found a spare pipe laying around, and I block it so it can't open the door. And it gives that player like 5 or however long they need to take to recenter, right?
Yeah. And it reminds me of when I was a kid. I used to have night terrors when I was a kid. So I had a He-Man sword.
Your audio is kind of weird.
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, you're better now.
Better now?
Yeah. You had a He-Man sword?
So I had a He-Man sword I would sleep with in hopes that I could pull this He-Man sword out in the middle of a night terror, in the middle of a horrible dream where the monster's trying to eat me, and I could pull the sword out. Fuck you. And with the safe word, I want to do that for people so that even if they were to say, they could have a description like yours, but they could also say, I pull my fucking He-Man sword out and I say, ha, fuck you, and I stab him. Like whatever it is that helps you take control of the scene, make it better, helps. And I think somebody in the chat here is asking something about how do you ride the line without going too far. This is one extreme way of doing that. But I think that if you put the groundwork in with your session 0, or at the very least formalize consent with a consent form that says, here's a list of things that I'm going to be covering in the game that are absolutely essential. Are you okay with these themes? If you're not, this game might not be for you. If you are, now check out all these other concepts. What's green? What's yellow? What's red? What's totally okay? Green. What's slightly sensitive? We might want to be careful. Yellow. Or what's absolutely not okay? What's a red line? That's red. We have a whole consent form on our website, gehennagaming.com/resources. And you can find our consent form. You can take this in any way that you think is best for you.
Yeah,
you can
encourage you to.
Yeah. I mean, you can even write down a Post-it note, like, violence on a scale of 1 to 10, like whatever your system is. I think if you formalize it a little bit, it'll help you as a GM, because then you can go, I have something here. Okay. Violence against kids is totally not okay. It's a red line for everybody. But violence against dudes in Mickey Mouse uniforms, totally fine.
We're going to Disney World, everybody. Right? Fuck that mouse.
Fuck that mouse. Fuck you, Mickey Mouse.
Or it's like Venture Brothers, Brisby B, right?
Or that comic where it's like, hey, I want to poke that dead body with a stick. Like, I don't give a shit what you do. Go for it.
That's how you describe my GM style.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll post that later. Someone in the chat, actually, yeah, it was me. I was making fun of you. Said, you're lame. You should have had the Thundercat sword so you could summon a whole squad. Thundercats, ho!
That's your genius.
What are you going to use the He-Man sword? Are you going to skip Battle Cat? You need a cat to begin with.
It's true,
It's
but
lame. That's a prerequisite. You don't do that shit in your life. It's
well,
a big commitment. You got to change his litter box. What if it turns into a tiger and has to take a crap? That's a lot more litter than you're willing to buy. What? You're only like 5 years old. You're having night terrors. Come on,
bro. You're gonna have the entire Thundercats team. Every single one of those dudes has to piss and shit in a box.
Yeah, your
That's
mom and dad
5
have a
boxes.
toilet, don't they? They've got toilet paper. I mean,
Cats don't piss in boxes or in toilets. They piss in boxes.
Yo,
that's 5 boxes.
Battle Cat does what a Battle Cat wants.
1 big litter box. Thundercats 5.
Thundercats are practically people. They can use the potty. They can use the nunchucks. You can use the toilet.
You mean to tell me that they are going to the bathroom in a regular toilet, not a Thundercats?
Dude, they've got a fucking mechanized base. Who do you think? You think you can invent something like that without modern plumbing? I'm an adult. This is an adult conversation.
You have a good point. You have a really good point. Thundercats use the potty. That's an adult point that you just made.
This is a t-shirt we're going to make now. Is someone in the chat says, Thundercats use the potty. God damn it. That's really funny. Very important to have safety mechanics, like Mr. Cultist says.
Oh, hey, Mr. Cultist.
X cards, yellow, red topics. That's right. Actually, that's pretty much how our consent form is lined up. Green is a yes, yellow is a maybe, red is a hard stop. So yeah, by all means, that's for everyone. It's a resource for any game. It's there if you need it.
I'm going to put a link in the chat here.
Very good.
We're talking about cats, and I almost said pussycat. I'm putting a link in the chat where you can find it.
Thanks.
Because, and again, I encourage anybody to use whatever system. Some people like X cards. One of the reasons why I like to have that like safe word mechanic, just because I feel like X card puts like a hard stop on things, and I don't want to make anyone feel pressured not to use the X card. And I worry that the X card will make people feel like they would feel bad because I don't know. It feels I don't know if it feels like you're ruining the fun.
It's like, do you feel like you're being a buzzkill if you use it?
Yeah,
it's a barrier in your own safety because you're worried about social aspects.
Yeah, it's the reason why people become victims. Like, it's one of the reasons why people
are victimized
or allow themselves to become victims, or at the very least get in positions where they can't handle things in like real life because they're like too afraid to speak up,
or too sensitive to the needs of other people.
Right, and the X card something. Right, and the X card feels very like, it's like, oh man, I personally don't want anyone to feel like they're going to ruin anyone's fun. I also don't want people to feel pressure to not say anything either.
Right.
So it's a hard decision. I mean,
it can be even harder on stream.
Yeah.
Because we typically run Cult when it's a stream. We like to entertain people in our community and do fun one-shots and things. So, we typically we invite people to play in our one-shots who we know can handle a certain level of horror. But we still put that safety mechanic in there.
Yeah, you have to read the room. You have to read the room, even if it's virtual. Rollers of Relay says, a great name by the way. Which is it's important. At the same time, I as a GM and I as a streamer it's challenging for me to pay attention to multiple things at the same time. So like paying attention to chat is difficult for me sometimes. I try very, very hard, but I'm so all over the place that I need to like really focus in. Otherwise you're losing me. But reading the room of all the players is important too. And I think with Cult, I like to joke around and say I'm the resident edgelord here at Gehenna Gaming. And it's really easy for edgelords to like smell their own farts and go, I am the most shocking. Yeah, boy, check out this scene. And you're like, and everyone goes,
didn't see that uncomfortable scenario coming, did ya?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, you're a douchebag.
I get it. He's awful. Right.
Oh, I get it. He likes to simulate rape on stream.
Still one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen was that stream clip of, I forget who it was, but someone had an android character.
Yeah.
My
I'm not gonna
God.
name his name.
It
Yeah.
was
We
like,
all know. That's
it
what
was
I was.
so uncomfortable. I felt so bad for that entire crew.
And with Cult, it's easy to accidentally have a scene like that, especially when there's a whole chapter on like how to handle sexual violence, and it's like, huh, what? And as somebody who avoids sexual violence in games,
Yeah.
like the plague, I'm like opening the book and I go, whoa. But then you also see, so for example, there are certain people who can do it really, really well. And who can really handle it in a way. I just can't. Maybe I'm squeamish with that. And I'm also worried that it'll make anybody else feel uncomfortable. So I just avoid it. But there's the way to do it, the best way to do it is to really have everybody on board for it. To say, okay, everyone at the table's okay with this. Now this is a thing that's going to be included as one of my tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
But I want to get down to the nitty gritty real quick because I don't want to eat up all the time here. Creating a scenario, let's say from like soup to nuts, the general scenario, and let's just talk about either a 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot, something short, right? How do you think would be the best approach, or what do you think would be the best kind of scenario to run with cults?
There's a lot of great pre-made ones. One of my favorites that sticks out every time is the gallery. Is that what it's called?
Atrocious Gallery, I think it's called.
The something exhibition, isn't it?
Oh, the Atrocious Exhibition.
Something like that.
Yes.
I don't think it's atrocious. It's in one of the supplement books. Atrocity Expedition sounds like.
Yeah.
Holy crap! What an amazing scenario.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who wrote it. I'm not sure who wrote it. And it's available for free. It's a masterpiece.
You can find it in Taroticum and Other Stories. You can find it on cultdivinitylost.com in the resources section. I've always wanted to play in that game.
I would probably run that myself if you wanted to play it for a change.
I would love to play that game.
It's so good. I can't. Whoever wrote that is an absolute genius of storytelling, because you get familiar with these paintings in a gallery, and turns out every one of them is absolutely fucked up love letter to something that the artist dreamt up or experienced in their lives, right? And as you go through the scenario, I think you go into the paintings and you relive or watch like you're a fly on the wall these horrific scenes that made this person the way they are, and it evolves into this hellish landscape that this gallery is happening. It's so good. It's like it sets up so much at the beginning. We brought the point of making the first act mundane and full of banality and normalcy to concretely solidify you into the horror you're about to experience. This is an example that takes that and the core concepts of what horror is and escalates it, elevates it. I forget what Gordon Ramsay says all the time. When you take a normal dish and you elevate that goddamn bologna sandwich by putting in pickles, you goddamn mastermind. Right? You're an idiot sandwich. No, in this case, we laugh, but because we laugh all the time, we make stupid jokes. It's taking that mundane, but it's walking you through a gallery. You donkey. It walks you through a gallery.
It's raw.
And
sorry.
You see this raw painting, and each player is like, okay, there's these paintings. If something, and this is a common thing in not only storytelling but in film, if you see something in a room and it's focused on by the director, that's a mystery mouse tool that will absolutely fucking be used later, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
If you see not necessarily a deer thing head, but like bull horns mounted above the mantle, and they keep focusing on it. Someone's getting impaled by that fucking thing, guaranteed. Whether it's Jason Voorhees picking someone else up and impaling them there or not, that's being used later, or someone's pulling it off as a weapon, right?
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah. So
That's
the atrocity expedition is the players are given time, talk to people there, why they're there, and the storyteller tells exactly what each painting is. And because it's an expedition paintings, there are cards that kind of just not only you see the painting, but they describe the feeling and mood. And you get some snobby art critic telling you, this is a piece from when he was a junkie on the streets. And now it's worth $1 million. You know? And you're like, I could give a shit about that. But that's a horrific painting. You know? And the point is, when all hell breaks loose and you realize they're portals into something super fucked up, but they can solve your problem, it takes the part that's mundane and links it completely with what the actual horror of the story is. That whole scenario was written by a freaking genius.
It reminds me of a couple of things too. First of all, it was written by Jason Fryer.
Jason Fryer, I probably owe you $5.
And the art in that book was from he's from Stockholm Cartel. Dan Alstrang.
Stockholm's like the mecca of tabletop.
Stockholm Cartel is they did Merkborg. So so but one of the things that I really like about the Atrocity exhibition, excuse me, is that it reminds me of Caveman's Valentine. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. Great movie, you should watch it. Great book, amazing book. It kind of reminds me of Masquerade. It reminds me a little bit about the how the I guess the elite class trade art or treat art or use art as a kind of investment while using people also as similar investments. It kind of holds a mirror up to the way that the elite class treat people. And
society.
Yeah, and it's such a clever way to explore that. And it's also, I feel like the Atrocity exhibition is probably a really good entrance point for anybody who has played Vampire, because the game feels a little bit like Elysium.
Oh, that's a good point. And that's
because
why I like it so much.
Yeah, because you're like these pompous, elitist, like rich
atmosphere.
Elitist art. Yeah. It's fun.
There was another one I really liked that was a pre-written adventure, and I believe it's for free. You might be able to tell which one it is. I don't know what it's called, but it's about this guy who comes home for like family dinner, and he is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically like feeding on all the negative energy of his family.
Is that the Lucina?
Yes, Lucina.
Lucina? Yeah.
It's so good. It's like so personal and fucked up. It's like the worst family dinner you've ever experienced.
People play this. People play Lucina like at a table during dinner. Like people play.
I would pay $100 for a good cooked meal and to roleplay out Lucina. I swear to God, dude.
I would also pay a Benjamin.
Not a rich man, but you bet I would throw that money down for that experience, because that would be amazing.
Yeah, someone says if your players can handle Lucina, they can handle any scenario. A GM friend of mine. Yeah, it's intense. It's
pretty smart.
It's an emotionally intense, and this is one of the reasons why I like Lucina, because this is how I run games. Is that it's emotional horror. I love the idea of shuffling in intense emotions with horror, and I think Lucina does a really, really good job of that, because it's essentially a family.
Yeah.
And I mean, who doesn't relate to that? And how intense can that get?
I mean, I even take stories that I run, whether they're personal or pre-written. Most of my stories I personally make. But I often find myself taking things that the players do get invested in and not necessarily turning them on their heads or using them against them, but I find something that is like a big emotional hook.
Yep.
And I utilize it. Mark, you were recently in a game of mine. You were very rarely a player of mine. You were in Mummy.
Love that game.
And you and everyone got really attached to your manservant.
Yes, I forgot his name though.
You know,
Samuel.
he was based
Samadi?
on someone I knew, so that should be really easy for me. Ugh,
God damn it!
Jay.
The Big Wet Dad or Rosie is probably
I know.
screen right now. If they're
But he
watching
ended
this.
up not quite making it. But then he did make it.
Kind of.
This thing that was like basically mental infection. And then y'all purged him of it and he survived. Yeah, I'm having a total brain fart on it, but I remember people in the chat being like, no, Rick, no. You know, and I'm like, and I never had that intention to use that character that way. But everything was set up for that moment for it to be perfect. And I didn't want to lose that character myself. I liked that character.
There was a moment during that game. I don't think I ever told you
It was too good not to
There's a moment during that game. It was the best boy scene. At the very end, when I repeated that he was the best boy, like I got a little choked up by accident. Like I got too emotionally attached and invested. Yeah. And I was like,
Sumar?
Sumar. Yeah. And I was so emotionally attached to Sumar. I'm feeling pride. I'm proud of him. And I'm also like upset that that my character's never ever going to see him ever again. And I need to let him go because he needs to be saved. And it's a very intense emotion. And I found that, like, bringing it back to Cult, if you are able to put yourself in a place of vulnerability as a GM, it's important and it makes the game better for the players. If you as a GM put yourself in an emotionally vulnerable place, controlled, but emotionally vulnerable through the NPCs, it will make your game that much better. I'll give you an example. Did you watch the Cult Echoes of the Past? It's okay if you didn't.
Is it the rock and roll one?
Yeah. That's the one with the guy from Nirvana. That's okay. It's fine. Don't feel bad. I'm only mentioning it because there was a couple of. It's great, and I was. I just had surgery, so there's.
I remember after the bath.
So there's one episode in particular. I think it was the second or third one. I was in a weird place, and I was also in a weird emotional place, and I was able to channel that through the NPCs and as they interacted with the players. And there was a couple of scenes like with Nick and with Persephone where like things got real heavy, emotionally heavy, and not like no one's crying. Could have gone there, and that's okay if it does. But if you as a GM are willing to put yourself in an emotionally vulnerable place and channel that through your NPCs and channel that through the game, especially the way that you ask questions, how does that make you feel? I like to ask.
I do that too.
To help me put myself in that vulnerable place and help the players allow themselves to be put in that place as well. I think that's the key. I mean, if there's a secret sauce, that in my opinion is the secret sauce. Put yourself in emotional vulnerability and allow yourself to explore that and channel it through the game.
And I think it goes back to us, in at least my point earlier, where it's like highlighting what's normal is what makes the horror shine, right? I remember someone saying, it might have been a strange person to quote, but a great person nonetheless, Whoopi Goldberg, was saying something like, if you really want to shock people, you talk comedy.
Yeah.
You do something funny, and it puts you in a place of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And then if you show something that's really deep cut, it hits a lot harder because your shields are not up, right? It goes right to center. It gets by your defenses personally. And it's not necessarily something that should be a GM hack or anything per se, but sometimes it happens in the moment. You get pick and choose your battles, and it's really hard to necessarily plan for something like that. A lot of that's just organic.
Yeah.
You might not experience that as a storyteller for quite some time. And if you do, sometimes it's even accidental. Um, Getting in the headspace of some of your NPCs can be challenging because sometimes you have a lot of NPCs,
Mm-hmm.
especially writing a campaign. I'm writing a couple of different campaigns right now, and I'm like, I have a lot of characters. I don't know if I'm going to be personally able to meditate and think about how each one of these people, how I would get behind the steering wheel and pull the levers and what they would do, right? You don't necessarily always have the time for that. I find that the characters that I've made who are not what you expect are the ones that my players not only gravitate to the most, but they latch onto the most. I find that, and this is for any game, from my experience, if you put kindness in a horror game, like an NPC who's got no pony in the race or thing to gain, but they're just someone who's kind, that can be a safe oasis for a player to recenter themselves to. And it gets them not only down from all the tension that is built up, gets them back to a secure place where they feel like they're in control. And I hate to say this, but when you have that as a player and you feel that sense of calm again and you're in control, that is when you go back through the doorway of what's truly horrible. Either you are reinvigorated with the fortitude to face your deepest fears, or those deepest fears are more horrible than they could have been before. And that, as a player, is a question that is, or not necessarily a question, but it's a situation that if you love role playing, you want to be confronted by that. Because that's what character is. So, what do? You fold now that you've recentered yourself, you found that peace. Do you hang on to it and retreat and run, go back to your safe warm blanket like Linus from Peanuts, or you face that tiger in that other room? You don't know. Being invigorated with the strength of 100 men after meeting with someone who provides you the confidence and self-worth to all or nothing. I'm either going to die here or I'm not. Whether this is a one shot or a campaign, it puts the true test of character on the line. That's what I love about games that are horror in general. They're able to touch on these concepts because horror puts you in a situation where things might not be okay. Cult automatically tells you nothing is okay.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you're playing Cult, not only is nothing okay, but what have you made a deal with just to survive?
And I think it's the buy-in with cults with everybody is that I'm going to be playing cult and I know what I'm feeling safe in, what my security blanket is that I know nothing is going to be okay. It's like when you sign on to watch a horror movie. And no other horror games in my opinion have this. There are other horror games, but they don't have this. And this is the buy-in from players that go, I want to be scared, but I also want to be made to feel unsafe as like through my character. And I am okay with things being not okay. And I think that a lot of games like position themselves as being like Call of Cthulhu does this, Vampire does this. A lot of horror games go, it's a horror game, but ultimately people want to be heroes. With Cult, nobody is a hero. And you can have heroes, you can have hero moments, you can have hero situations, but nobody's a hero in Cults. And I think if you crack open that book, if you're even interested a little bit to play this game, when you start going upon this path of digesting some of this content, some of this stuff, you quickly understand that you're not going to be a hero.
Or even if
You're not.
you could be a hero. I mean, if you think about the way Red Moon's The Summit ended, someone ended up not only saving
Oh yeah.
their child, but they and another person self-sacrificed themselves to stay in this loop forever.
But that's what I mean by
Gave up their life or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's hero moments is what I meant.
It's a moment, but it's not gonna last. You walk out
Yeah.
stained, which I guess is what you meant.
Yeah, you're not going to be standing there and going, city. Oh,
Sounds like you peaked or something.
I did it again.
You broke it, you bastard.
Broke it. But and that's I think really that's it. It's like the buy-in of being of jumping into this game is that this is an uncomfortable game. But it's also a fun one.
Those tell the best stories, though, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Rewarding. Every Kult game that I've ever run, people at the end when it was done were like, "Oh, that was intense."
It's an unforgettable
was
experience,
amazing.
which is something you can't say about a lot of other games.
Which brings us nearest to the end here, and I think that the final point that I should make is something that is inspired from something else. The safe word comes from, it doesn't come from gaming. The safe word comes from the BDSM community. And there's something else that also comes from the BDSM community. I'm not in that community. I don't represent that community. I just know about it because I'm curious. One thing I do.
So gave you.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm not speaking from a place of expertise. Right. I'm just a dummy on the internet talking. One thing that is important is the idea of aftercare. And with Kult, I've found that it's
really
much
interesting. I liked it.
Yeah, and you experienced it during Kult Silent Hill. At the end of it, things got real fucking intense at the end. Like it's where all of my games go. It's hard. My games are hard at the end, and afterwards, the players feel this like sense of drop, and in intensity. Don't worry, I'll wear a mask with a zipper on it next time.
Bunny ears.
Yeah.
Dog face.
Yeah, but like. There's a need to make sure that my players feel okay afterwards and are feeling rewarded. So I like to do this thing where I like say, okay, well, let's talk about good stuff. Like let's talk about something that's positive. Even if it's puppies or something silly, I'll joke around and like make everybody share one thing that's great and positive and feeling good about their lives right now. So it snaps them out of the negativity into the positivity.
And that was good. You know, it helps you refocus out of a game that can take you to so many different places. But if you think about that entire tactic and why you need it, pretty much why this game is fantastic. Because it's able to take you to those, not different worlds, not different scenarios. You can get those from any game. It takes you to different depths of experience.
Yeah.
When it comes to role playing. That's what makes this game really special.
Yeah, and it's dynamic. I mean, I have not even delved into the capabilities or the potentials of this game. You can have a fantasy horror through the dream world, or even through Gaia. You can have sci-fi horror. I mean, you could do anything with this game. I will be playing Kult for the rest of my life. I cut my teeth on Vampire, but I think Cults, I'm going to be a lifelong convert.
Hard Sam. So, if you enjoyed this episode, because it's pretty much over, reach out to us. Tell us your thoughts, because we're genuinely interested. You can reach us via either our email, highcouncil@gehennagaming.com, or you can reach out to either of us on Twitter. Our @handles are literally posted under our names on this overlay. You can even join our Discord and talk about Kult there. Get in a game, perhaps. Maybe even Sweet Talkers running something for you. We do have a Saturday Night One-Shot series coming up where, while we're going to be having a lot of new games, we definitely want to cherish and highlight the games that we already have run before that we just can't get enough of.
Can I also interject? There is we're I wanted to make an announcement today during this stream.
Good night,
For
everybody.
I wish we had like a fast credits.
The candy cane thing that pulls you off stage.
So if you watched our Cult Silent Hill stream on Virtual HorrorCon, you can actually find it on this channel. We re-premiered it. It's go check out our past videos. You'll find it. You can also find it on Caring and Comfort Studios Twitch as well. But I wanted to revisit that world, and not just the world of Cult, but more importantly, the world of Silent Hill, which is why we are going to be doing a mini series of Cult Silent Hill starting on March 24th at 8:30 p.m. every Wednesday, starting March 24th. There's going to be a set of players that are going to be entering into the world of not just Cult Divinity Lost, but also of Silent Hill. Two worlds that are so near and dear to my heart that orbit each other in such a way. I am quite sure that Cult Divinity Lost was inspired greatly by Silent Hill, and I'm sure Silent Hill was inspired greatly by the original Cult. So,
Yep.
I hope that everybody who's watching who is a fan of Cult, I hope you guys watch that. I like to say that with Cult Divinity Lost, yes, I do want to entertain people and I do want people to have a good time, but I think that the Cult fans are the ones that I am most pressured to impress. So I really hope that you guys check it out. I hope I do Cult a service to you, because you people who are huge fans and longtime fans of Cult Divinity Lost keep this game going. In fact, the new scenario book that they had kickstarted, the writers on that book were writers of some of the old fan content from back in the day. So if you're a fan today, you may be a content creator later. You may be able to even write on a Cult Divinity Lost book. So check it out, 8:30 here on Gehenna Gaming, twitch.Gehenna Gaming, twitch.tv/Gehenna Gaming, March 24th at 8:30 p.m. Cult Silent Hill. Check it out. Follow us on Twitter at Gehenna Gaming. You can follow Rick over here at Oops All Setite. You can follow me on Twitter at Marchosius with 5s instead of S's. Do you have any parting words?
I mean, I'm running the stream tonight, so I get to say when exactly this goes off air.
It's true. You can keep going if you want. I mean, fire away, my friend.
You're here all night, motherfucker. I got you castage. No, I mean, seriously. This guy is he's obviously one of my partners and co-founders of Gehenna Gaming. And that being said, I'd probably pay $40 of my own money for him to run Cult for me again.
You're a damn good player, though.
He's so good at it. I'm not just saying that because, I mean, I can blow the smoke up this guy's ass all day. We talk professionally because we own a business together. But no, seriously, find yourself a fantastic storyteller.
Yeah.
Or better yet, listen to all the insane ramblings that we have provided you tonight. Become that fantastic storyteller. I shit you not. Our entire business model and the reason why we founded this company, this community, anything we ever do, no matter what we become, is solely to try and get people to be the best they can be at telling stories that are mind-blowing, out of this world horror tabletop experiences. Yeah. I hope that 20 years from now, after I am done with the streaming bullshit, or whatever happens to me, I don't know, I could be dead. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'm a death magician for some asshat in a different realm from Cult. I don't know. But if someone of the caliber of like a Matt Mercer, but he's got a horror bend, is like, you know, I got into Cult because these two knuckleheads talked about it. Or I got into Cult because Mitchell from Helmgast got me into it. And all these people who did talk about it helped me to tell better horror stories. My job, my mission is complete. This has been all for that. I don't care. That's what I want. I want people to be telling fantastic stories, taking people to fantastic places, having questions of conscience, and experiences that you could only get from like something insane like lucid dreaming and a feverish nightmare of pure entertainment that you can't even capture on film because it's in the mind's eye and you yourself know what scares you best. I want you to have that experience in a collaborative tabletop environment. I want you to share it. I want you to take that, share it with as many people as you can. If you have any questions, ever want to talk about why this game is great, or if you have a game you think is great, for all these same reasons, reach out to us because you are the kind of people we want to talk to.
Yeah,
and have
big
in our
time.
community. So join our Discord, do whatever. You want to run cult? You think you have what it takes? You think you're a Macho Man Ready Savage? Reach out to us. I will play in a game.
Holy
And
shit, I will too.
And I will say, God damn, you are the Macho Man Ready Savage of cult. And I will celebrate you because people who tell great stories, whether they're a player or a DM, need to be celebrated. And that's how we make this community great.
Also, normalize tipping your GM. If you are a player, if you are and you have an amazing GM like that, that you think is amazing, you don't necessarily have to tip them with money, but just show your appreciation for what they do because it's not a thankless task, but it's a very involved one. And if you're scared to GM, that means that you're probably interested in GMing. Don't be scared, or be scared.
Were you scared?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, frightened. Yes.
Yes.
I still think I'm a bad GM.
And you're not. And it took someone I don't even get along with anymore to be like, here's this. Describe the scene to me. What do you see? I'm like, bah. And I had described like a prison scene. They were like, you just listed off a bunch of shit, like off the top of your head. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's all you gotta do. The rest is mechanics and story, and you know your story, you know your characters. Works out
You
for
don't even
itself.
have to be, and you don't have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of mechanics or encyclopedic knowledge of the lore. I know that's like a lot of people think that, but you don't.
Yeah, especially
You
with
really
cult.
don't.
Sky's
Yeah, of course.
Because the sky's kind of the limit. You can invent your own horror.
Yeah, and if you fuck up, if you feel like you fucked up, guess what? No one noticed but you.
Yeah.
I fucked up a few times.
Fuck up all the time, and I cover it gracefully.
No one knows. No
one knows but me, and I never talk. if Mark only knew how much I fuck
up. Also, there needs to be more women in cult. There needs to be more people who are not just white dudes with beards drinking
people of
IPAs.
Color, all walks of life, in gaming in general, and that's another part of our mission statement. So, if you like those things and they're important to you, join us. Simply become part of our community. Run games for us. We actually do run conventions. And with Virtual HorrorCon, especially this last one, began paying our GMs. If you want to run games behind the scene, that's an opportunity for you.
And Cult this year was shamefully underrepresented in our GM pool. We had Helmgas sponsoring Virtual HorrorCon, but we didn't have a lot of GMs running Cults. So if you run Cults and you want to run games for people, like, come, please, my cultists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're like 2 weeks away, or 2 weeks out from when Virtual HorrorCon 2020 happened.
Yep.
That's a takeaway I wasn't aware of, but those are metrics we're still looking over. That just tells me that nights like this, we'll have to have more often, and we'll have to get people involved in running the game.
Yeah, and I think that Mr. Cultist can come and run games.
I'd love
for
that.
us. Come, run.
Absolutely. Or anyone who's interested in, even if you run I don't care what you run. You can run any pre-made adventure. You can run something of your own.
We had someone running Cthulhu at one point. Pokemon Cthulhu at one point. We'll let you run whatever the hell you want, so long as it's interesting and compelling.
You laugh, but you have no idea how much I'd sign up for that.
You know who ran that, right?
I totally would have. I might. Anyway, we are Gehenna Gaming. Our links and where you can find us are below our names. That's pretty obvious. You can find us Cultist Wednesdays, typically every week.
Every other week. Every other week. So next week there's not going to be any Cultist Wednesdays. March 24th starts Cult Silent Hill. That's going to be every Wednesday after that for 3 Wednesdays. And then we're going to go back onto our every other week schedule. This is Gehenna Gaming. Gehenna Gaming are masters of tabletop and horror. Thank you so much for watching. Rick, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I love talking to you, my friend.
That is why we made this whole thing. I love talking to you as well. You're obviously one of my best pals. I need to tell anyone that. Why am I sharing that piece of information? Gehenna Gaming is our other friend and co-founder, Ian E. Muller, and Nick Francia, our stream producer. And we're growing all the time. So there's opportunity. We're always doing new things, so stay tuned. But thank you for joining us tonight for Cult, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great night, a great week.
And remember, death is only the beginning.
Good night, everybody. We're just clowning around.
Bye.
Bye.